Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're covering migrating and optimizing to Office 365 or Microsoft 365 without the chaos, with a focus around the things we need to do from a document management, collaboration, SharePoint and Teams. Just to let you know, we are recording this session, so hopefully everyone is okay with that. I'll start with some introductions. I am trying to get my slides to work. Apologies for that. Technical difficulties already. Mark, over to you.
Yes, my name's Mark Sheehan. I'm a senior consultant within the Modern Workplace and Apps team here at Antares. I've been working in the SharePoint and Microsoft 365 space for about 15 years or so now. So I've been doing a number of these types of projects.
Surely you're not old enough to be there for 15 years.
You'd be surprised.
And I'm Aaron Cunnington. I'm the Managing Director at Antares Solutions. So likewise been working in the SharePoint space for probably a little bit longer than that, hard to believe. But yeah, today, what are we here for? Today we're going to talk about how to migrate to Microsoft 365, primarily our experience around for document management and knowledge management, to enable you to leverage SharePoint Online, Microsoft Teams, and to do that without the chaos that often goes with that. So we're going to talk through some of the key points on how to make that transition and that migration as smooth and painless as possible, and really about some tips and tricks around what are the typical problems associated with that and how to avoid those chaotic deployments. Then when we get to the end of that, quite often we're finding these days that migration is utilising Microsoft Teams as part of that solution. So we're going to cover a little bit around what's a good approach and something that we recommend for customers to utilise to keep that Teams environment clean and healthy and easy to run. So just a little bit about our experience. We've got over 15 years of industry experience. We've done this before. And when it comes to the migration side of things, we've migrated everything from SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint online to online, so tenant to tenant migration, but various document management systems from file systems to open text to whatever it might be. But the core goal around how do we get onto a modern document management Microsoft 365 collaboration platform, and a lot of the problems are very similar regardless of what platform you're coming from. So as part of that, we have a range of intellectual property which for when we talk about IP to make that process smooth, it's not just about technology, it's about the methodology. What are the approaches that we take? We have a range of checklists that we use as part of each of those phases to help us go through that. And feel free to reach out at the end of this for anyone who would like a copy of some of those checklists. But then we also have technical IP and solutions such as Tellus, which we'll talk through at the end, which can help streamline that process. We are strategic aligned with Microsoft. We have three core practices within our business, which is application development, modern workplace, and data solutions. And we won't cover too much of those, but I'll give you a bit of insight into what they are later. Agenda. So what we're going to cover is what are the typical steps to a migration for collaboration and document management. We're going to give some insight into how do we approach it, and what are the learnings that we have found from that. So on the back of that, we've sort of narrowed it down to 5 things that you must consider to make it successful. There's a range of other things that you could consider, but these are the things that you must consider in our experience. And then it's really about some tips for, once you're in place, how do you keep it there and keep it running smoothly from there? So, typical steps. How do we go about it? What are the things that we would do? As I said before, sometimes, the IP, well, not sometimes, some of the IP we have is around the approach and the methodology. So a typical approach for us, now this is very high level, but effectively it's broken into 5 areas. Well, it's kind of 5, but one runs across, so there's sort of 6 in there, which is a discovery phase. We do a build phase, the migration, the cutover and go live. And then we have change management. And we'll talk a bit more about change management, Mark, but importantly with change management, it is something that is not at a point in time. It's for the life cycle of the project, lifetime of the project, and it goes past go live as well. So it's an important thing to consider that that's something that should be ongoing and doesn't sort of stop once you go live. And from there, that's sort of broken into what gets done in a migration. So maybe you can explain some more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we do get to that migration phase as part of the overall project, it's key to focus on what we currently have, make sure we understand exactly what exists that we are migrating across into the new solution. We then look at making sure that it's all mapped so that what we have in the existing solution is going to be mapped to the right location in the future solution.
Yep.
We also then make sure that the installation and the configuration of whatever migration tool we're using is in place. Once that's done, we do a test migration, just a subset, just to prove that it's going to work, get some testing done, make sure everything's configured as we would expect. The next thing we find that makes the most sense is splitting the migration into waves. So rather than trying to do a big bang approach, particularly when we're talking about terabytes and terabytes of data, we split it into waves that make sense for the business, make sense for the end users. And we run a full migration for each of those waves, making sure that all the data has come across, that we can perform testing prior to the cutover. It then allows us to do a few delta migrations prior to the final cutover, which allows the data to be up to date, gets some timing for us so we know how long it's likely to take. So we're very prepared for that cutover weekend. So once we're comfortable with the testing and we have everything in place, then we do get to that cutover weekend. We make sure users are not using the existing system. We do a final incremental migration, bring everything across, get it all entirely up to date, make sure users are available to do some last minute testing. And then as of Monday morning, we turn on the new solution, turn off the old solution, and we're ready to go. So we do that in the waves, making sure that everyone has the ability to come in, see the system, and that confidence is there. That process.
So what you're saying effectively is that, there's the planning up front, and then the migration piece happens incrementally, and then we do a go live over a weekend. So the incremental migration, are there any, how often that happens? Is there any rule of thumb around how many times you would do an incremental?
It all depends on generally the size of the data and how often it's being used. But for the most part, you would have a delta between the full. You don't want to do months between the full and the delta. So you would make sure the full is ready and done. You do one delta, a couple of weeks prior, and then you've got that final delta on the weekend, depending on timing.
Okay, cool. So that's the standard, like a typical approach from a migration perspective. What are the things that can go wrong?
So it's five.
And how did you get it just to 5?
Yes, so it's very high level because there are many things that can go wrong. But the top 5 that we found over the last 15 plus years is planning or a lack thereof.
Yep.
A lack of engagement from end users, not using the correct tools, a lack of a cleanup, and poorly designed end solution.
Okay.
And we'll dive into those in a bit more, a little bit further.
Just on the planning though, is there I guess any rough guide of how much planning on a project should be done against the size of the project? Or
generally it's around 20 to 30% you would look at as the planning phase. A lot of times we find that planning is done very quickly, and then more focus is on the migration, but putting that focus on the planning, making sure we have everything ready to go and understand where we are and where we're going, makes the rest of the process so much easier.
Okay, cool. And just sort of tying this back into the areas that go wrong, and back to what is our high level approach and how we would do it. Quite often we see that the problem areas are the discovery, so upfront, and the migration. So, and that I think we'll cover more about where that sort of goes wrong there from the maybe the tools perspective and a few other things. But I think importantly, rarely does it go wrong in the build and the cutover and the go live phase. Because being able to build it is really a technical challenge. So if we plan it and design it poorly, we can build it poorly.
Yes.
But if we design and plan it, well, we can build it well. So
absolutely,
the things that can go wrong in the build phase are often something that can be fixed with a technical change, as opposed to a longer term issue.
That's right. If the solution is core and put together properly up front in that planning phase, the build becomes much simpler.
Perfect. So again, I think the highlight there is that it's more of a people challenge rather than a technical challenge. So hence the reason, the priorities. Poor planning. Tell me
Yes.
more.
So what essentially happens in a lot of migrations that we've seen in the past is that not enough planning has gone into understanding what we currently have and understanding where we're trying to go. So making sure that there's a plan in place to, we've planned around what exists and what will and won't be migrated,
Yep.
as well as what we're trying to achieve in the future state. Making sure that we aren't just saying, oh, we just need to move for X reasons,
Yep.
but we actually know what the final solution should look like, or the final goal is at very least.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And I think what happens when we get it wrong, it's can't sort of stress that enough, is that everything hinges on doing this part well.
Absolutely, yeah.
As we often say, sort of garbage in, garbage out,
That's
and was it failing to plan is planning to fail? I love it.
Perfect.
Good statement.
Yes.
But importantly, it really is the most important part is to start with that discovery and the planning phase. So how do we fix it?
We generally fix it with we understand the why. Why are we doing this? Generally, it's not just to move into something new and shiny,
Yep.
but there's a real business goal that we're trying to fix here or improve upon. So understanding the current state allows us to properly understand what the future solution should look like, and putting that in place around this mission statement that we have in mind. So know that what we're trying to achieve at a high level goal, so that we can properly look at what exists, make sure we understand what will and won't come across, and then look at what we're building and make sure that that's going to be core and aligned to that mission statement that we've put in place for this project. Okay.
And so I think with the mission statement, I think that's probably, if you think about the importance of different migrations, about understanding the why. Well, what are we trying to achieve here? Is it that we already have a fantastic collaboration platform on another environment that we need to bring to Microsoft 3? And that could be one tenant to another tenant. Yep. So we need to maintain that. Or it could be, we're using older technologies, which are difficult. If you think about the changes that we've had in the last, couple of years around being predominantly in the office, getting access to network shares, et cetera, to being at home. So how do we increase that employee engagement, that employee experience, that collaboration experience? So getting back to the mission statement of making sure that our people are more capable of doing their work, at home or in the office or in the cafe type thing. So having the mission statement is more than just, I need to move content from here to here. Absolutely. But what's the end goal and the purpose, and that will drive what we're
and as long as that's front of mind throughout the entire project, then you're going to be, everyone will be heading in the right direction.
Okay. No engagement.
No engagement. So one thing we often see with a lot of migrations is that it's usually technology driven. It may be that we're moving to a more modern solution. Yep. We need to get off an existing solution through lack of support. It might be that we're looking at merging tenancies. It might also be that we're looking at cleaning up and fixing up some licensing costs. But as a general rule, it's usually starts or initiated from technology. Yep. So it can be often confused to be a technology focused project. And therefore, sometimes the end users get left out a little bit. So really making sure that this is a business project and it's run by the business with the business in mind, technology obviously being the enhancer as opposed to the key part of this project. Yep. So making sure our users are involved up front so that we properly understand what their current state is. We also understand their issues so we know what their future state should look like. Yep. And also making sure we have change champions within the business, not just within IT, so they can really try and drive that from inside the business and the departments.
And I think we've got the little approach down the bottom and highlighted it, that this is an area that affects, or it's one of the few areas that affects the whole project. So you need engagement across that whole length of the project, not just in certain stages.
Absolutely.
So it's something that requires constant engagement with people. And what happens when we get it wrong is I think importantly. This is not an infrastructure project. This is not we're rolling out new desktops. This is not we're building a data warehouse or a data lake so you can report on. This is a type of project that directly affects the end user. So it's all about the employee experience. So there's not many other projects that will affect everyone from an engagement and employee experience perspective. So the importance of making sure that we get that right it is imperative. It's really about designing for the people that are going to use it. Make sure we get them on board. We're not just throwing them at them thinking that this is what you should do.
Yep.
It's based on talking to people, making sure that we haven't guessed what it is, that we've actually done the research and brought the people along on the journey.
Definitely.
And how do we fix it?
That change management, that piece along the bottom that goes from start to finish and beyond, that's the core way to fix the engagement issues, making sure people are communicated with relevant communication. Yep. We have the news coming out so they're not surprised by anything. They know the timings, they know the reasons why, and they're engaged with what's going on. Yep. So if they understand why we're doing something.
That mission statement again.
Absolutely. They know why, because there is a nice, easy to digest mission statement.
Yep.
They know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and generally they're much more likely to get on board and feel engaged. If we're asking them what's wrong and fixing their current day-to-day problems, obviously the adoption is a lot smoother than if we're just throwing something at them.
Okay. What's the just-in-time training? Can you tell me a bit about that?
So often we see with a lot of projects, particularly around migration, is that training is done for the new solution prior to it being rolled out, or even months after it's been rolled out, which both times the timing doesn't quite line up. If they've done something 3 months ago, chances are they've forgotten it in the meantime and they have to think back what it was. Or if it's done a few months in advance, they may have already started using the solution incorrectly, or they've already lost trust or confidence in the solution. So making sure the change champions have the information to take back to their end users, as well as making sure there's systems and processes in place that people are finding out what they need to know at the time they need to know it.
Okay. I think that highlights too that change management is something that is, organisations like us can come in and help with that change program, but it really needs to be the organisation, the company that we're working with that's going to embrace that, because the change champions, the champions who are going to help you adopt the platform, that are going to go and talk about how great this is and how it makes our days better. It's something that is always going to evolve, so it's not something that finishes when you go cut over and you go live and we've done our change and adoption. It's that just-in-time training. It's that making sure you got the champions there who are going to, as the organisation evolves and our changes need, as I said, we've seen it the last couple of years about how we've changed the way we work in an organisation. How do we keep evolving that, and how do we make sure that we've got the right people internally that can be our champions, that can help us know what we need to change and where do we go to next. So,
and the change champions are also a good conduit, not just to get information out to the business, but to actually get information from the business as well, find out what is and isn't working, so that we can do that continuous improvement cycle.
Yeah, I think it's an exceptionally important thing. Incorrect tools. What do you mean by this?
Incorrect tools. So often we see organisations trying to save money on licensing with choosing cheaper migration options or tools for end solutions, governance, whatever we have in mind. And they're trying to save costs on investment. We generally find that will end up resulting in higher effort costs during migration phases, or even in go live and cut over and clean up. If we were to spend the money on making sure we have a tool up front that is going to do what we need to do, things are going to go a lot smoother.
Okay. So, what happens when we get it wrong? We need to spend more time than we need.
Which obviously there's costs associated with.
Yep. And some of the costs are not monetary costs. It's the cost of lost confidence. That's an important thing, is like we say that we're going to go live in July, and everyone's, we're starting to communicate it with it. We've got this new platform coming out, and before you know it, it's August, September. There's a lot of loss of confidence. So there's that, what happens with people start using it, they're already on the back foot. They're potentially got a bit of a negative approach, and they might be looking for problems, and disappointment with missed deadlines. But I think also providing a result that is not trusted, as we didn't get everything. I think
absolutely. If something like version history doesn't come across, or there's documents missing from the migration because the tool has missed them or hasn't called out an obvious migration concern such as special characters or whatnot, then users have already lost that trust.
And you don't get a second chance at first impression.
That is for sure.
How do you fix it?
As mentioned, be willing to invest in the right tool and review all the available tools. So there's a number of tools out there on the market. We've used quite a lot of them in the past, and they all have their pros and cons and their advantages and situations in which you would use them. So depending on the scenario, are you doing a tenant-to-tenant migration, file share migration,
Yep.
Trim migration, whatever it happens to be, there is a tool for the job. So knowing what's available, reviewing what's available, key.
Cool. Sounds good. No cleanup.
Cleanup.
What do you mean?
What often happens, again, this comes back to engagement with the users, but if we bring across everything as it is without doing any data cleanup, then we're probably just going to be faced with the same issues.
Yep.
Making sure that we have anything that can be archived in the current solution has been archived. Anything that can be destroyed gets destroyed. So old documents that have been bypassed with additional documents, we may not need to keep them if there's no regulatory or legislative reasons to keep a document.
Yep.
Destroying it saves time, saves space, saves clutter. The next part around cleanup is really a migration project is a great opportunity to restructure what you have.
Yeah.
What is currently in place was probably put in place either over time or for an organisation 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So here's our opportunity to restructure the current content so that it fits the new way of working, the new organisation, and gives us the ability to be flexible.
Yeah, and I think when you get it wrong is second chance at first impression. I like to use that one. But importantly, losing confidence from people. As we said, this is a people-based project more so than it is a technical project. We want to make sure that when we do go live, that we don't lose their confidence. We don't want people to think that this is like a new face on an old problem. It's just a shiny new interface to an old problem. And importantly, as you said, the way we work has changed. So how do we make sure that when we're finding something, we're using version control? You might be going from a file system which doesn't have proper version control, so you go from my document 1, my document 2, etc. So about getting rid of that, which also is important around how do we make sure that the experience is relevant, so that when I'm searching on the new platform, when I'm searching for content, I'm not finding old information. So I'm like, you're wasting my time because I don't know how to find the right information because there's too much garbage in there.
Yes.
And that's probably the best case scenario, and the worst case scenario is, how do I, if I'm searching and finding information that's outdated or old, that could be a compliance or a risk issue, is using the wrong templates, using the wrong document, the wrong information.
So definitely.
I think the cleanup piece is certainly, as you say, it's a great time to restructure, get rid of the garbage, come onto the new platform with an end solution that is targeted at making my day better as an employee.
Absolutely.
And let's see. What's next? How do we fix it?
So fixing that one again, engaging users early on, super important. The last thing we want to do is ask people to do a cleanup 1 week before migration. They need to have the time and the tools available so that they can do the cleanup at the best of their abilities, knowing the advantage of what they're doing. So just saying, hey, can you delete a few old documents is not really enough. They need to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, what the new solution will look like, so that all those V1 final, V1 draft final, all of those get deleted. So we do have one clean document that is the most recent. So if they understand the advantages, they have the tools and time to make those changes that need to be changed, and they've been engaged early on, much more likely to have a cleaner, nicer solution rather than having that garbage in a new platform.
And I think, importantly, there's elements that we can bring to this, that we can go, okay, we can not migrate something that hasn't been looked at in the last 12 months or 2 years. But the context of the business and the purpose of information, just because it hasn't been looked at doesn't mean it's not important.
Exactly.
So these are parts of a project that you can't outsource to somebody else.
No.
You have to have that subject matter expert within the business that can make the decision on whether it's still relevant. And generally speaking, they're in the business, they've already got a job. So, it's making sure we're giving them enough time so they can do their day job as well as doing this. So
Exactly.
quite often this piece of work can be a lot more time consuming than we originally think or might plan for. And it might not be, sometimes it's the elapsed time. How do we get the right people to have their time, so to give them enough runway to be able to clear up that content and not go, okay, I need it done by next week, because just delete the stuff you don't need.
Yes, absolutely.
It's often a little bit more complex than that, and it's well worth planning that out properly.
Most definitely.
Poorly designed end solution.
Yes, so back to planning.
Yep.
If we haven't...
And apologies for my capitalisation there. That was... sorry.
That's all right. So when we're not properly planning through our future state, don't understand where we're trying to go, then we might put a solution in place that isn't going to be flexible or isn't going to achieve the things that we need to achieve. So first of all, understanding the requirements, the issues currently, the hurdles, that gives us the opportunity to properly build a future state that will make sense for the business and be something that we can improve on ongoing, have engagement, give people what they need. As we've mentioned before, you can't take anything away from people in these types of projects. The absolute minimum you need is to give them what they already have. But ultimately, here's an opportunity to give them some more, improve on their day-to-day life, give them something that automates something they've been doing, takes an hour every week. All of a sudden, it's only 10 seconds. Here's an opportunity to do that. So putting that end solution in mind that is going to achieve all of the business requirements as well as give users a great experience is key to making sure we have a smooth overall project.
Perfect. So I think when, as you said, when we get it wrong, we lose people, make it too hard. Bare minimum is, this is meant to enhance my day, not detract from it. So if it's harder for me, and we know that we've got to get that change happening and get people on board, so we need to make sure that there's the emotional reason for me to want to use it without complaining and without going, I'll just go about it another way. We need to make sure that we design a solution that scales. We need to be thinking about, well, what happens if we need to be doing this, this, and this in the scenario, and how do we make sure that we're not going to be constrained by what we've designed today, knowing that it's going to be something that's going to be used for multiple years moving forward. So again, the difference between having it an on-prem versus cloud, and cloud accessible, and how do I get access to that? Importantly, coming back to the planning and the design phase, is that making sure that we're designing it with the end user experience in mind. How do we make sure that we're not creating future problems for people not to do stuff because it's too hard to use?
Absolutely.
We've often seen that in the past with, document management solutions where you've got, too many metadata fields that you want to capture, too much information around it. You need to be able to automate that and find that balance between that so that you're still getting what you need as an organization and as an end user, so we get a better knowledge management experience, but not overburdening me so that I don't do it. And this sort of fits into the discovery and the go live phases, because it is primarily from the solution built in the beginning to make sure it's designed well, but also in the tools that you use moving forward as well. So hence it's a little bit in there.
That's right. If you don't do it first properly up front, you'll find the issues at the end. And you're doing this same project in 3 years' time, trying to fix the issues that were not solved first time around.
How do we fix it?
Exactly right. We understand what the requirements are. As we've mentioned, we document what they will look like so we know, and we get users involved. Users need to be able to give their current hurdles. One, so we can fix them, and two, so they feel engaged as part of the project and they see the benefits of what we're trying to do for them.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. I think, it's just sort of highlights thinking about the end user experience. Again, it's a technical implementation of a people problem that we're solving. So the thought process around how do we make sure that the experience and what we're designing is helping you and helping me be more effective in my job, so that I can focus on the things that I need to, rather than the tools and making it clunky.
Exactly right. So it's got to be a good user experience.
Got to be a good user, and it highlights the planning and that change management and the training and the ongoing engagement. It's not a set and forget type of project. We need to make sure that you're building in that change and the whole champions across the project and getting people engaged. So I wanted to just briefly cover now. I know we're sort of running close to about half an hour into it. So one of the things that we have seen over the years, and particularly now when you look at Teams and SharePoint and document management collaboration, Teams is a priority for most organisations. Teams is where you're going to be doing that collaboration. So how do you do that in a way that will give the end users the experience that they want, but also the organisation the comfort and security that they need, and not cause too many hassles from an IT administration perspective. So managing teams. So when you're rolling out teams, governance should be top of mind. It really is something that is something that is enabling people. Governance is something that should be a positive experience because it's going to allow me to do my work without having to think about what could go wrong, as far as I don't need to be the security expert. I don't need to think about how long do I need to keep this for. So really the governance and the process around making sure that we can create teams and use them allows me to just go and create a team and use it in the best possible fashion that's helping me, helping you, and helping the organisation. So it's really enabling your staff with best practice templates, it's securing your content, and it's about controlling your knowledge without things getting out of hand. So, and these are typical challenges that we've seen over the past 15 years. And the conversations that we have with customers now is really from a team's perspective and collaboration perspective is, how do I create teams? How do I allow my teams to be created seamlessly? And how do I manage that creation without having sprawl? We've worked in many migration projects where we've got, in the past, it might be, 1,000 SharePoint sites or team sites with one document in it. So you get content that's all over the place and very difficult to manage. So you want to put some structure around that. So how can I manage teams and create teams without enabling that sprawl? How do I put some governance around it to make sure that I know how long a team is it being active? When was it last used? What's the life cycle of that? When do I get rid of it? When do I archive the content? And how do I manage that? How do I make sure that we've got the security enabled and make sure that we've got the process in place to, be clear on which teams have external access, which ones are not allowed to, based on the type of work that I'm doing. And again, really about how do I do that without having me think about that if I'm not the team's expert. So today's Teams challenge is really about security and access, provisioning process. How do we simplify that to allow people to create them without the bottleneck or out the risk of team sprawl? How do we control the ongoing operations of them? How long do we keep them? When do we get rid of them? The limited training and adoption. Again, don't make me think. Just allow me to use the tool appropriately, and what tools to use and when. So, on the back of that, we created a product called Talus. And again, Talus is something that we've built around teams. You don't have to use Talus, but you need to think about the process and the problems that we've solved with this is certainly something that every organisation should be thinking about. Whether you want to try and build your own version of it or whatever it might be, you need to have these general rule of thumbs, these solutions in place. So Talus is really about collaboration with the guardrails up. It's creating a central hub for creating, managing, and governing teams that is integrated into the fabric of teams. And what do I mean by that? Effectively, you can see here, here's a team, here's my teams, and it's got the ability here to show me the teams that I am part of, the public teams and the teams that are waiting for my approvals. But really it's about how do I go and request a team? So I can just simply hit request a team. That's going to bring up a wizard for me to walk through and create those teams. Importantly, why is a wizard important? Why have we taken this approach? Instead of just creating a blank team and then making me work out what do I need, if I'm not the team's expert, then that's going to be difficult for me to do. So Talus is really about creating templates for your teams to say, as an end user, what is the purpose of this team and what are you doing with it? So in this scenario, we're creating a project team. As you can see, we've got different templates there, and these are all customizable. Once we create that or select the type of team, what's the purpose, we can then select the classification of what's the security measures. Is it open? Is it general? Is it confidential or highly confidential? Once we select the security, we know that, well, if this is a highly confidential site, we will put some DLP policies around it. We will not enable, external sharing, all these types of rules. So as an organisation, we're defining what the rules are based on the process of selecting the right team and template for you. And again, it's taking the thought process of me. I don't have to think about, hey, can I share information on this? How do I enable external access, etc. And then once we've selected the classification, we then get into some additional metadata. So again, some of the challenges we see with teams generally at the moment is that I've got a team name and a description about it, but what's the purpose behind it? If I want to put some further rigor and process around it from a knowledge management perspective, I want to put some metadata around it. So we can give the name, description, which business departments, and we can customize this to provide the right information that's relevant for your organization to make sure that the team, once it's created, has all of this additional metadata. And I love a fancy animated GIF, so apologies, I just had to throw that in there.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, this is the interface of all the teams that I'm part of. So we can see here, not only do I have the team name, but I've got which business department does it belong to? Who's the owner of the team? Not necessarily the technical owner, but who's the business owner of that team? What's the status? Is it active? Is it archived? Is it inactive? And the template. So it's a project site or a community site, or is it an external sharing site, or is it a highly confidential site, etc. So we get to see the information around this, which can help me then search for it. Now I can search across not only the team name, but all the metadata that goes along with that. So importantly, once we've created that, and as we said before, there's the templates. We create templates. As you can see here, I've got a team, which is the Q&A team. Our provisioning process, we define that template. We've got custom templates that we work out what's the best template for an organisation, whether it's a team site, whether it's a project site. You might have a small project site which only has a few assets, or a large project site which has a whole bunch more rigor around it. We go and provision the tabs within the team, but we also provision the assets behind that. So we've got notebook, we've got planner, so we go and create the planner board. We've got documents which are sitting in SharePoint, and got information architecture around that, a bit more structure, and you can have workflows, etc. So it allows us to go and create the team and provision the tabs and the channels and the right structure according to the best practice templates. And why that's important really is that if I'm creating a project site, a project team, do I need to know that this is how we run the projects? How do I go and set up all of these assets? How do I go and create a planner board? How do I go and bring in our document management, SharePoint lists into the site? How do I add a tab to an external site, etc.? So these are the things that we can automate so that as an end user, I don't need to think about it. And I've still got the structure and control around that from an organisation perspective. So really, TELUS, and again, as I said before, this is about what you need to do, and TELUS does this, but these are the things that an organisation must be thinking about when you're rolling out teams. Make sure that you are securing it properly. Don't allow things to get out of hand. You want to make sure, so TELUS provides that automatically applying the right levels of security based on the template that we walk through. It also has the ability to catalog the team. So now I've got not just the team name, but I can search for meaningful information across that team and find it. I have automated workflow approval. So when I request a team, I've got an automated workflow approval. It removes the confusion. We've got custom templates, which allows us to create a great deal more structure, and I don't have to think about it. It means I can start collaborating sooner, and I have a visual dashboard of where the teams are and what information is there. We've got some lifecycle management around it. So it takes the thought process out of it. And that's it from a TELUS perspective. I wanted to cover from as an organisation, we do a lot of work in employee experience. So from Viva, so modern workflow, modern work capabilities, it's intranets, it's that migration, it's Teams, it's it's Power Apps, Power Automate, and obviously Viva is a large part of that. We also do have a data and AI business, so anything around data strategy, data engineering, data analytics and data science, we're happy to have conversations with people about. I'm conscious of time. Before we get into questions, actually, I wanted to go into questions, and I'll leave that slide up there, but from a next steps perspective, if anyone's interested to find out more, I'd love to just send us an email or get in touch with us about, we've got the pre-migration checklist. If you're looking to go through that process, that could be a good start to get an understanding of what are the things that you need to be considering. We've also got a complimentary 2-hour migration consultation. So if people are going on that journey, give us a call and we can run a little mini workshop around what they need to be considering and the things and how we can possibly help or what they need to be doing. If you wanted to see a demo of TELUS, then please reach out. Happy to do that. And we also have a complimentary Teams health check. So those organisations that want to see the health and status of their teams, what they should be doing, where there's issues, please reach out on that. But on that note, I'll go over to any questions. So I'm not sure whether...
Yeah, there's a couple that the team have sent through already.
Okay.
So when migrating from SharePoint on-premise to Office 365, do you recommend rebuilding the solution or can we migrate as is? So as we touched on briefly before, migration, it is a key opportunity to restructure where is relevant. So I think that is one thing that we should definitely be considering during migration phase rather than trying to lift it as is. In some instances, it might make sense, but for the most part, you've got a lot more additional tools in Office 365, Microsoft 365, than you did in on-premise. So you should be making the most of those. I think is a good it's a good opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. What else have we got? If you're migrating now, how do you know we won't have to migrate again in the future?
Yep. Again, as long as that planning is in place and we've put in a good end solution that is flexible and can be that change management is there, so we have continuous improvement and ongoing support for the users. They should be comfortable with the tool. The data should be correct. If we keep something like proper governance in place, we're not trying to clean up 1,000 teams in 3 or 4 years' time. So making sure that continuous improvement is in place stops us from having to do another migration project in the next few years.
Okay. And again, I think that comes back to that, the value of a mission statement. It doesn't have to be, wordy, et cetera, but it's what's the purpose? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And if the problem we're trying to solve is, to enable people to work from anywhere, doing anything or collaborate better, then generally the solution will solve. If we get the right solution to that, then it's not generally something that you'll need to be migrating again in the future because the platform can do it, unless you change, technology providers, I guess. Can you keep the version history and metadata while migrating content? Good question. Can you?
Yes. So for the most part, yes, you certainly can. Yeah. There are, as you mentioned before, with file systems where you may not have that version history, there are some, caveats and hurdles there that you may need to come across. But for the most part, if you're doing a SharePoint to SharePoint migration, particularly on-prem to on-cloud, then all that version history can be maintained. There are definitely some things that we can do in other instances, file shares. So you're not losing any data, you're not losing any metadata. Everything can come across with the right tool. It's just knowing what that end goal should look like and planning accordingly.
Okay, cool. Do you help design and create custom templates in TELUS? That's a very good question, and I'm glad it was asked. Yeah, absolutely. So with TELUS, out of the box, it comes with 4 templates, which are pre-built based on our experience of what most organisations need. But what we would generally do is work with the customer to go, well, what's unique to you? What are the types of projects that you do? What's the personas of the people and the types of work they're doing? And from there, we can build out what does a good template look like for these types of projects, and from there we can build that template and bring that into TELUS. So has the ability to continually have custom templates that are relevant for each organisation. The other question was, does TELUS help stop teams sprawl?
Easy for you to say.
It does. It's not that easy for me to say. But by virtue of having that automated workflow approval process, 2 things to start with is when we are searching in Teams, we can actually have a look for teams. TELUS will allow us that more granular search to be able to search for, the project name, but also by department and the purpose and the information around that. So it allows us to get greater insights into the teams that are there. So to then be able to join a team, if it already exists, we can actually join it rather than create a new one. And the other thing is that it has the ability for the workflow process to go through so that someone can then approve it and go, actually, you know what, it's come to me, but I know that Mark created the same sort of project team last week. So I'm going to say no, go back and speak to Mark around it. So it does help that, one of the key things is it helps the people find right information, but also helps you control that process. We can also do some matching on, hey, it's the same team name, etc., same purpose. How do we know how much effort is involved in changing platforms?
Very good question. Planning, again, I'll say it again. If we know what the what the solution is going to look like, and we've planned for that, we can then put an effort involved. Generally, a discovery piece would be done up front,
Yep.
which can then decide and show you what sort of effort is involved in going to a newer solution and migrating and restructuring.
Yep.
That discovery, that planning up front is key to knowing exactly how long that piece of string is, because it is a piece of string.
Yeah, good point. The other one, can TELUS be used by administrators to identify and delete or archive teams not in use? Absolutely. The benefit of TELUS is that it also has a lot of information because we're capturing things like department templates, status, whether it's active or not active, etc. We have an admin feature which allows us to see how many teams are inactive, how many teams have got external access, but then we also have the ability to do some bulk deletes, and so you can then go and edit and delete teams as required. So as an administrator, if I've got the right permissions, it allows me to go in and select teams and filter and categorize them based on whatever criteria, and then action them so I can delete them and do things from there. Is this recorded video is providing to us? Yes, we can provide a recording to us, to you. What do I do about existing? What do I do about existing security in my file shares?
Again, this is another thing that we need to take into consideration during the planning phase, seeing what that security looks like, and making sure that we have a place of the right tool to implement that. We can map the security so that it is maintained. If we're restructuring, understanding why that security was in place originally and see what we can do up front. So again, there's quite a lot that can be done when it comes to keeping the existing security, but we first need to do that planning, discover why it exists, what does exist, and how we go about applying that to the new solution.
Cool. And I think we're almost where we are at time, but happy to keep if there's any other questions. There was another question about I missed the presentation at the beginning. I would like to get a copy of the recording as well. Absolutely. We'll send a link out to everyone for that. I don't think there was any other questions. I'm not sure if we've missed any. When migrating from SharePoint on-prem, did you capture that with 365?
Yeah.
If we're migrating now, how do we know? Yep. Can you keep the version history and metadata while migrating? Yes.
Well.
Cool. I think we've got all the questions answered.
If there are any further questions that you think of after the session, feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. And I think, again, for anyone who's interested, I'll put that up there. I'll share our emails, but please reach out. Happy to chat. Happy to share the migration checklist, or do a couple of hours of a migration consultation, as well as anything around TELUS and Teams Health Check. So that's it. And thank you all. I think thanks for the session. Hopefully it was of interest, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you all very much.